right, hey, welcome to another episode of the Peanut Gallery. We have with us today a good friend of ours and a visitor to our region, Leah Perez. Welcome here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Woo! And you have the Peanut Gallery as usual. And a secondary guest, we got Elliot here.
Elliot!
So,
Say hello, Elliot.
Hi, I'm Elliot, and you just bumped me in the teeth.
Sorry.
So anyways, welcome to another episode. Hey, so let's start with, tell me a little bit about who you are. Just give me a short version because we'll get into some more in-depth stuff, but somehow you ended up in Belize. Mm-hmm. So a little bit about your family, and then what you do.
Sure. So my name is Leah Perez, and I grew up in Kingston, Ontario, so just a few hours away from here. And by God's grace, I grew up in a Christian family. So I grew up loving God from young. And when I became a teenager, through different circumstances, I just felt like I wanted to be maybe a youth pastor or work in children's ministry or youth ministry, which led me on the path to go to Bible school because I figured that's what you have to do if you want to do that.
And if you want to find a husband.
Well, that's never the official reason.
But it's definitely an underlying thing. Yeah.
So when I always figured after Bible school, I'd come back to Ontario. This is where my family is. So Manitoba was like my far reach, go somewhere exotic, far away by myself, spread my wings a little bit. And I thought I'd end up back here. But while I was there, God really put on my heart to get outside of Canada. Because even as a youth, I was involved in children's ministry, youth ministry, and drama ministry. And I knew how to do activities.
Yeah.
And I knew how to look Christian. And God was like, you know what? You need to get outside of Canada so that you actually have to rely on me. And around the same time, I had a major crush on this really good-looking Latino guy.
And he is good-looking, just in case anyone wants to know.
Still good-looking. And yeah, he wanted to return to his home country of Belize to do children's and youth ministry. And I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of what's on my heart too. So one thing led to another. And then after I graduated, we got married on a Saturday. And the next Saturday we were in Belize getting ready for summer camps. And it's been nonstop adventure since then.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about BC and what you do. So you run camp stuff. Maybe give us a little, because until we were in Belize, I have no context for what Belize is like. So give us a bit of an overview of what Belize is like and then kind of how you guys are working among it.
Yeah, so Belize is a small country kind of smushed between the Caribbean Sea, under Mexico, and Guatemala and Honduras a little bit below. We have a really beautiful mix of different cultures. So we have the Spanish, Mayan, Mestizo out in the villages, a large part of our population. We also have some really solid communities of Mennonites. And then in the city and in a couple other communities, we have a large population of English Creole. And so we live in Belize City, so that's the majority of the culture that we have. So while my husband is Spanish, I have not learned Spanish yet, but I do understand more Creole. And
can you speak at all Creole? Give us something. Everybody, we all. What does it sound like?
Oh gosh,
that sounded English.
No, I'd have to think of something.
We got time. 30 minutes.
Yeah, all right. Set the timer. Yeah. I'll think of something yet.
Okay.
But it's hard too because it just kind of comes out and then everyone looks at you funny because I'm this gringa who's trying to speak Creole.
But Belize, for the most part, is English. That's one of the big languages,
the official
right?
language is English. And so it's a big tourist trap because everyone wants to come because they don't have to worry about language barrier and what's not. So a large part of our industry relies on tourism. So things got really hit hard this year and it's taken an extra toll. And a lot of our kids in Belize City, their families were involved in the tourism industry. So, but as a ministry, as an organization, what we do is we recruit young people from across the country. We train them to do summer day camps, and then they come for a week at a time unless they're part of the leadership team, which lasts for the whole summer. And they go with us every morning to different communities and do a day camp program. So that's songs and lessons and activities and games and what's not. And then in the afternoon, they come back to our base. and they will have their own activities. We'll sleep and rest, of course.
Yeah.
But we're by the beach, so we have some fun. We prepare for the next day. We'll have campfires, guest speakers, and what's not. So it's kind of like a youth camp where the morning activity is outreach program. But yeah, and for the rest of the year, we will follow up. Our team of interns and staff will follow up with the kids in the communities, as well as the youth who've gone back. And keep the connection, help them to, or encourage them to keep growing on the skills and the life lessons they learned until the next summer.
All right. So one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is because our church has tried to partner with you guys over the last couple of years. And so we've had a lot of conversations about what actually benefits nations when you go into it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to address before we kind of get into all the details, because I think one of the things that puts everybody's, especially around here, are, raise our walls or flags, whatever. Oh, so a bunch of white people are going into another country to try to tell them how to live, right? And that's it. That has happened a lot. It's a lot of how missions have been done.
Yeah.
And so I want to start with that immediately, because that mindset has actually had a massive impact on Belize. And so I want to talk a little bit about the impact that mindset has had on Belize.
Yeah.
And then we want to transition from there into what makes you guys different than that you're not doing the same thing as I just talked about.
Yeah. Before COVID, we had estimated that about 30,000 short-term missionaries or volunteers come into our country every year. You stand at the airport and you can tell who they are because they're coming in matching T-shirts, and they come and do things that we could easily do ourselves. And we've heard like the worst end of the stories of groups who would come who probably raised money to come down to build a wall, paint a wall, and then they leave and then it gets knocked down because it was a bunch of teenagers who don't know what they're doing. But, they wanted them to feel good. And so it's really unfortunate on so many levels.
Okay, let's get a little context here. 30,000 people, you figure, coming in.
Yeah.
What's the population of Belize?
We're at 400,000 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that's now, and the big thing is, again, it's the English thing. So even for us, so one of the things that we like doing is mission exposure. We think it's important for our kids to understand that the world is not all what we have here in Canada, but that is a lot of people coming through.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is just approach. Because if you're coming to fix us, if you're coming to do something for us, you're probably hurting us more than you're helping, because that could have been a job that one of the dads of our kids could have done and been paid for and to provide for his family. But instead, we have someone coming who is not in the building industry, doesn't know what they're doing, but it's a nice photo op. So it's really unfortunate. And so our approach is to recruit local people and engage our country. Our vision is to see Belize change Belize through the love of Jesus Christ.
Love it.
And so we try to incorporate that, whether it's in resourcing the ministry or in the actual work that we do. We do think international partners are important, because the way we view our walk with God is that we're part of a bigger kingdom. We're part of something bigger than even just in Belize. And so we need each other. But I think we can help you guys by hosting vision trips where you come down and you see what God is doing there, and maybe open your eyes to a new perspective of what God can do out here on this side for you guys too.
Right, and I think it's incredibly interesting that we come down there to try to fix you guys. We're not doing that well. Like when you look at us as a country and you look at the United States and you look at our poverty issues and our issues with racial tension, I mean, the list goes on. It's interesting the mindset when we go into a place like Belize to kind of go, man, we could really help you. And they probably look at us and go, I don't know if we want to turn out like you guys. Like, right? But it is a lot of it. And I don't want to say it's just a photo op thing, but man, it does feel good to leave your riches for a week and to go down and be like, here I am helping the poor. And then you go back to your riches. And you haven't changed, you haven't done anything. And the impact that it has in a lot of these countries. I mean, poverty tourism has gained a ton of traction over the last couple of years. And it's a way, I mean, there are some people legitimately trying to do well.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. And one of the things that was really sad for me is having grown up in Canada, I didn't get to do mission trips, I would say, internationally, but I was involved in camping ministry. And I recognized in myself that the experiences I had, even just outside of my church community, even though it was in Ontario, to get experience in leadership, get experience, spreading my wings, using my gifts and my abilities, I then took that back to my home church, to my home, my school in Westnot. And so we see a lot of young people come to Belize for a week and they're doing stuff they wouldn't be willing to do here at home.
Right.
But because they're somewhere else, they're willing to do it. And then, they come back and they bring that growth back to Canada, back to the States. And we're kind of left in the same situation we're in. And so that's why we're really excited to engage our local youth, because even though they might not come from the city themselves, although it is a good mix, some of them do, which is even more exciting. They go back to their own communities with a little bit more understanding of their own country, because a lot of them, it's the first time they've worked with an Asian person or from Belize, who's grown up in Belize, that, they would never have talked to anywhere else, or a Creole person or a Mennonite person. But they love Jesus too. And, okay, maybe it's not so strange the way they worship. I kind of get them now. And breaking down those barriers. And, hopefully we'll reap the benefits of that in 50 years when they're leading our country. So,
right. No,
we'll see.
and it's interesting. It's one of the principles of our podcast, at least, is I think when you get to know people, the ability to understand at least why and what makes somebody tick really, really helps. And I think so often we just sit on the outside and you just kind of watch the news or whatever, and that's fine. But you if you don't know them, and so for us going to Belize, so the first time we went down, I think we were for a wedding. No, we spoke at a youth camp down there or something. I don't know. We ended up in Belize. I just assumed that Belize would be somewhat similar to Mexico. So Mexico, where I grew up till I was 3. I grew up real fast. Anyways. Mexico, where I was born, I should say, has become very Americanized. So when you go there, I don't experience anything different. So to me, it's just, and they're actually far more rich than we are at that point where, we were. But we walked into Belize. Belize was a culture shock for us. Remember Josie and I landing going like, we don't recognize any of the stores. The way the city is laid out, the way everything is, like it was completely different. But then when you get down there too, then all of a sudden now my Belizean friends up here, I'm like, I understand you. Like I understand how you got to be where you are, right? Because it's a different world.
Absolutely.
And so when you go down there to try to say, I'm going to fix you, and you don't even understand the context, it can do a ton of damage. So I think we've kind of hammered that point and gotten that across. So that's good. We do want to come back to the point of, at the end here, I want to talk about, what does it look like? Because there are some churches that listen to this, and what does it look like to partner with something? Because we still think it's beneficial for our youth to come down.
Absolutely.
We still think, we're planning a trip right now, hopefully for January. That's the idea. How do we do those things, but to make it a benefit for your country? So I do want to get there. But let's get into specifically, so you guys are in Belize Changing Beliefs. Great vision. Let's start talking about how you actually do that. So talk to me about the needs in the country, and then kind of how you guys are on a very tangible, how you guys are working to actually do that.
Oh, needs. There's so many needs. As a ministry, our heart is for the children and the youth. And specifically, our heart is in the city, because we think that whatever happens in Belize City kind of spreads out and affects the rest of the country. So our heart is in Belize City for the children and youth. And right now, some stuff you'd read in the paper is the gang violence.
I was going to say, what's it like? Like Belize City, walk us through, because when we think about it, a major city, what would that be like compared to a major city out here in regards to poverty, in regards to access to education, that type of stuff?
I haven't checked recently, but for the longest time, the city population was about 100,000. So about a third, or maybe now a fourth of the country, or that's probably grown in itself, is in the city. We have a population that about more than 50% of our population is under the age of 30 or even 25.
So it's young.
It's a very young country. And we've got lots of families are between the States and between Belize. So even like if you heard my husband's testimony before, his mom left to the States with the best of intentions to come back for him, but kind of just left him there. So you've got a lot of families who are kind of split, kids living with grandparents, a lot of families where, brothers and sisters are from different moms or different fathers and what's not. So there's not really a stable foundation there.
Is that economic pressures that you end up in the States, or why would people be leaving?
It's the promised land of the Caribbean. It's you go there and your problems are solved and there's opportunities and it's comfortable. And a lot of students a lot of young people from the city, it seems, young guys, it's kind of their dream. They're going to go play for the NBA. For any kind of student who takes their studies seriously, they want to study internationally. And a lot of them who do get the opportunity don't come back to our country. So we have a lot of talent spread out over the states, but isn't coming back. They're hard workers. They had to work extra hard to get up there.
Right.
And so people value that and hold on to them instead of bringing that back to Belize. And so that's difficult as well. But yeah. But for us, the majority of the need that we see is definitely poverty, and gang violence affects our children the most, the group that we're working with. Yeah. How we try to address that is we work with community leaders who are already there, and they're from the community. Some of them are moms who are just starting something out of their backyard, trying to give the kids the love and the attention they need that they can't get because their parents are working so hard to just put food on the table, trying to show them there's an alternative life to joining the gangs, which, the gangs offer family, the gangs offer security and income and what's not. And so if you're not getting that from home, then, why not get it from there?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting point because where I'm from in Mexico, that's a big issue too. And for us, when we look at it, we go, man, there's so many drugs coming from there, and how could you get caught up in that? But if you're there and there's not endless opportunities, and you get an opportunity as a young kid where you're going to make good money, you have the opportunity for a little, popularity, a little type of community. It's not as easy for, I mean, it's easy for us to be like, how could you? But for them, this is a bit of a way out.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough pull when you don't, the promise of education. I think out here we just don't grasp how crazy it is that when we graduate, high school, the fact that we got to go to high school, the fact that everything's here, and really, especially now, there's almost no trade. If you want to get into a trade, they're hiring. If you want to get into a place, they're hiring. Like so now from that mindset, trying to go back to thinking, okay, well, if you grew up in a place where that isn't there, and there isn't the hope of having a good income, and there isn't the hope of home ownership, and there isn't all that, well, then all of a sudden joining a gang doesn't seem like a terrible idea, right? And especially when you mix that some brokenness and poverty and addiction issues and all that jazz that goes with that.
Yeah. And if that's all you've known, then what are you going to go into? And so even just this last year, the kids haven't been in school since March 2020. And so the best of them have been going home with packages, and our group has kind of adjusted some of our programs since the kids are available in the days. We're going to different partners, helping them do schoolwork because a lot of them don't have internet and what's not to be able to help them figure some of this stuff out. And if nobody's home, how are you supposed to teach yourself? So that's been difficult. One of the programs Daniele was at, she was talking with some of the young girls and who were giving her advice on her makeup, on how she can be, more attractive and get a boyfriend. And they started sharing with her like their plans to get pregnant so that they could have a baby to love and love them back. And they were just 12, 13 years old.
Oh, man.
And we wonder like if that's what they're doing, that's most likely also the situation that they grew up in, right? And so they're just continuing that. And how, I've got a grandma who's looking after her daughter, who's got her own daughter who's now going to have a baby. And so how do you get out of that economically to be able to properly take care of everyone? You don't have an education now because you're just trying to do whatever you can to not starve and put a roof over your head. And then you've got fear of being caught up in gang violence or just in
Belize
crossfire.
City is quite a dangerous city from what I understand, correct?
It goes through waves. Right now it's pretty tough. I'm not sure what the latest headline is, but the last 2 months we've lost at least 10 or more young guys to gun violence. In the summer, one of our first camps, by the second day, one of the girls was coming, and the night before it was her uncle and his girlfriend, an uncle being like 19 years old, had been shot the night before, and now she's at camp and she's trying to hold it together, but what's she going to do, be at home? And so, how do we comfort and show love and try to tell them about hope when everything you see around you kind of feels hopeless? And we don't have necessarily the quick fix answers for those, but we have to believe that there's there's more and that there is a way out and that there is still hope. Because if there's not, then what are we doing?
Well, and that's why I love so much the Belize Changing Belize thing, because if you can help build their economy, if you can help build opportunities, it's one thing. And that's one of the things that when you guys were talking with us first about the missions trips and you come down there and you have all these promises of hope and then you leave. But for them, they're like, but what hope? We don't see that. It's not there. Like you guys get to go back to, Canada, the US, whatever. You have that hope. For us, we have nothing. So that's part, I love that. Talk to us about some of because you guys do some pretty innovative stuff, both to raise funds, but also to spread hope in the way you guys navigate the country. I know your husband is a wizard in getting everyone to like him. And so it's pretty wild when you see him having conversations with the Prime Minister's wife and those types of things where it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to, I think people want to be loved. And I think part of the issue with the church for so many years has been that we're so busy trying to tell everybody else how to be better that we've stopped loving people. And so we go into places, and I think our intentions are in the right place. Like you're trying to make the world better, and we authentically believe Jesus is the answer.
Yeah.
But Scripture's pretty clear. You're supposed to love people.
Yeah.
And
For us, a huge part of what we want to do is through building relationships. I think that goes in every aspect of our program, of our resourcing the ministry, is just how to engage people on a human level. For our programs, for like our day camp program, so something even as simple and as basic as that, where you could just run a program. We build into that our locally created curriculum, so we're using examples that the kids will be familiar with. We're, talking about things that are around them, so they're familiar with the stuff that we're talking about. But then we also build into the curriculum a time where this local Belizean leader, volunteer, is sharing their experience every day. If we're talking about, a time when they had to make a choice, then we make sure that they share some of their own, so that they can be a personal example to the kids of somebody, from my church, from my community, from my country, who's, choosing to live a different way or a different life, or has made maybe a bad decision and, come through. So we try to build in intentional relationship. We think it's super important to go back. Daniele's done an amazing job of keeping a constant schedule of going back to the communities. And sometimes that's just sitting down with the community leader and crying with them. Because like when your kids are being shot and when they're afraid to leave their houses, so they're not coming out to the program anymore, it can feel really discouraging. But to just come alongside and just be with them and say, hey, what can we do from you to encourage you to keep going, because we don't think we can do anything. We do kind of come and go, but when you're living there, that's when you have the most impact, I believe. So we build relationships that way. We try to stay connected with the youth. Things have been a little bit more difficult on that end because of COVID and not, keeping our focus in the city more. But even through our resourcing the ministry, and I don't like to call it fundraising, because I think that's so limiting in that there's so many different avenues that people can support. So like this last year, we got, I think, 3 cows donated, right? And that is an amazing resource. So we were able to share that with the different feeding programs in the city. We were able to help support our missionaries through, providing them with food. And we have other companies who are giving what they have. And so it's about relationship. It's not just about what we get. We have a Harvest for Kids project. And so the farmers work together in their communities to put together a field to raise the crop and sell it. But then we also try to keep connected. So when we're able to, we'll bring the kids to the field from the city and expose them. Some of them never left the city before. Expose them to a totally different way of life and to kind of get just more idea of how their country works, more idea of like the world outside. That's, maybe that'll inspire them to want to do something different as well. So again, relationship is huge. And, it's hard. Part of our job especially being assistant director and my husband the director. Part of our job is to bring people on board, and I would hate that anyone would think that, oh, we're just meeting with them because we want their money, we want their resources, and we need money, we need resources, but our heart is really to just connect with people and see how they might want to be involved in the greater vision and participate in something greater than ourselves. And if they're not called to do that, there's lots of other things that you can put your resources to. So, yeah.
But I think there's a principle behind that. We're not talking about fundraising. That's not what the podcast is about. But
no. Sorry, I didn't mean to go there.
I think there's a principle there, and we've learned, and you guys are learning the same thing, that you can convince somebody to give you money through methods of whether you guilt them, whatever you do, when you show up but if you can get them to buy in and see the vision and be like, I want to be a part of that. Now you've got a partner.
Yeah.
And that partner is worth way more than that one-time donation that you're going to get. And I think often, again, we limit that because you go in, you try to get money. Well, no, the goal is to build a relationship. Go, look, is this something you'd want to partner with us? Now that's a whole different dynamic. And now they feel like they're a part of it, so they're going to give a lot more. So in the end, it's significantly better financially and all that jazz.
And again, for us, that's just another way that we're engaging our vision of Belize, changing Belize. It's a whole part of who we are.
And you know what? We've been thinking about this a lot as a church and just as a community, because there's been so much hate in our world. Oh, yeah. And Jesus just constantly just keeps going back to, you need to love God and your neighbor. Love your neighbor. So and his thought process literally was that love is actually more powerful than anything else you can do. Yeah. And if you love somebody, you can do far more. So when we miss that part to try to achieve some other goal, he's like, no, there's no other means to change. There's no other means. If you can't get people to love each other, nothing else is going to work. You can force it through laws. You can force it through government, but you can't force change. This is one of the struggles with racism and a lot of that. Well, you can't mandate that. You have to change people's hearts. Yeah. And Jesus, I think that's where he was so brilliant. He's like, look, if you can just figure out how to love your neighbor, you can love almost anyone.
Yeah. And I think that comes through relationships, not just education, but through relationships and conversations like you guys do.
And the work of it. The work of relationships. They're not easy. Anyways, okay. So talk, mom, you're a mom.
I am a mom.
So you're a mom who is from Kingston.
Yes.
And you left here to go to a city that's significantly dangerous. I mean, chasing a good-looking guy. So, I mean, girls get it. They understand. Right? But what's that like, raising your kids in the midst of that?
It's interesting. It's very interesting. I can't say that I've actually really thought about it. It's just where we're at. And so just trying to make the most of it. We've tried different things in adjusting because of our lifestyle, being between two worlds and often traveling and connecting with different regions of our own country, to be apart as a family, isn't ideal. So we've tried putting our kids in school, and then with COVID now anyways, homeschooling's been a good fit. It gives us the freedom to travel. So yeah, I don't know. It is what it is. I guess our kids are going to be some of those, what do you call it, third culture kids, or they don't really fit in Canada. They don't really, fit in Belize, but I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
Because there's a cost.
Oh, yeah.
There's a cost to doing what you guys are doing. But at the same time, you got some pretty incredible kids.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the experiences, I know when we were down there, I was just like, oh my gosh, some of the stuff they get to do. And so you guys do this Unbelievable, I believe, is your video series.
Leah Perez. Make sure you subscribe. Click and subscribe. My husband would not be happy if I didn't do a little plug. So thank you for opening that door.
Well, I think we can look at the downsides.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we're getting maybe a little personal because there's a fear thing, right? You always want to give your kids the best.
Yeah.
But there's also a piece of what I admire is if you're actually going to change the world, you have to get into the hard places. I think there's a mentality of, in Christian circles, we'd have our monks and stuff like that who disappear and we go off on our own. And you can have your own.
Yeah.
You can isolate yourself from everything bad, but you're not going to institute change.
Difference. Yeah.
And so as a parent going down there has to be a bit of fear, but at the same time, your kids are going to have an understanding of the world that a lot of our kids don't, and I think there's incredible value there.
It's also it's kind of difficult too because you also see or you hear of pastors' kids can sometimes rebel and be like the worst ones.
Not my kids.
No, not yours, not ours either. But I think our approach has been, especially because the need is always so great and there's always so many opportunities. We've tried to be intentional with involving them. and making them a part of it. And so it's been a pleasure, traveling with Anya and sometimes making her part of our presentations and getting them to share and to be excited about that. And the Unbelievable Perez's started out as a hobby, but my husband can't do anything halfway. And so he really enjoys and is really taking the distance of, being intentional then, okay, well, let's do an activity. We can highlight the country we love so much and do something as a family and get to share that with the world about all the great things and the good news that's happening in Belize and get to learn along the way as a family. So that's been really neat experience for all of us. But yeah, it's, yeah. I don't know.
All right, so let's get back to, in the time we got left here, how do we partner well? What are your thoughts on, and it's not just churches, it's people in general, our culture, my generation, the generations younger than us, there's a big desire to see the world become better. There's a big push for this. What does that look like then for you guys? What are some of the things that you guys have seen works well in regards to helping you guys out? I mean, the easy answer is money, but that's not the only answer. And so what does that look like? Let's start with churches. What kind of church have you guys have found effective or maybe ineffective? Tell us all the things that we shouldn't do, maybe, and we'll rule out.
No, and I don't want to be bashing anyone because I think everyone has great intentions.
Everyone's learning.
Yeah, I think the intentions are good. I think the most effective, if you're going to do short-term missions, is pick one church and go back every year. And ideally have, as much as possible, have the same people go back every year because then you can follow up on the relationships and you get to know people and you get to see them grow and you get to understand the needs a lot better than just like, we'll go to Africa one year and, South America another year. And I think that's more about experience than being helpful. I think also, and this might have to come from this side because our churches, a lot of them are used to, groups want to come, they want to bring stuff, they want to bring money, and they want to do something. So they'll let them and they just kind of stand back. The local church in the other country will stand back. And so I think if you go with the approach of saying, hey, we want to do this together, so we're going to bring 10 people, but we need at least 5 people from your team, from the church to commit and kind of make that a requirement for partnership. It might be hard, it might be difficult, and maybe the first year, they'll say yes and then they won't show up. But I think trying to, from this side, encourage that, this is a partnership and not just, a mission experience or project. You're not a project or people. I think that's something that can maybe set a different tone. Really partnering with the local people.
Do you think some of it is just a lack of articulation as to what your goal is? So when people come to Belize, because there's kind of the way we develop a lot of our programming is, especially with the younger ones, there's a piece of just exposure. Yeah. We're not going to pretend that we're going to help you guys. This is going to take some effort from you because you're helping us.
Yeah.
Do you think some of it is just that we try to say it's one thing when it's actually another? So it's really just exposure, but we're doing it under the guise of missions. Do you think if we could just be a little more honest with what we're trying to accomplish down there, would that help? So if you're going down to a church to say, look, we got 10 kids, they've never been out of the country, they don't even know they don't know anything.
Yeah.
And we think it'd be beneficial. Do you think some of it is that we try to make ourselves feel better about some of this stuff when it's not actually that? Or do you think it's just that we don't know?
Yeah. I don't know if there's many churches out there that are as intentional and purposeful as I've seen this community be. And so maybe perhaps that is it, or maybe it's just we've always done this, so we're just always going to keep doing it. We've always done a mission trip with the team. The youth expect that once they reach grade 12, then they get to go on a trip, So it's just that's what we do, and we're going to do it, and we've gone here so many times, so we're just going to keep going there. It's just part of the routine. It's an event or an activity more than it is a relationship and building the kingdom. So I think, first of all, being intentional, what you want, and is it helpful? And then articulating that, I think that's a great next step. And then just going and being open and flexible to things changing and ministering along the way. And making sure you're also taking care of the people that you're visiting. And sometimes it's refreshing to have a group come and be like, we just want to see. Because sometimes when we're in the intensity of it, you get the blinders on and it's just everything's so intense and this needs is so great. And it's just, you start to get burned out. And then someone comes along and be like, yeah, so tell me what's going on. And when you step back, you're like, oh, wow, look at what has been going on. Look at the things, that God has done and things are going well. And, oh, the progress that has been made. I totally, missed that because I've just been in the thick of it. And so I think it can be beneficial that way too. So, yeah, I think those are a couple things.
Okay. All right. So, first off, thanks for stopping by. We've really enjoyed it. So part of what you guys have done for us is you've shared a lot of how to run camps. You've shared a lot of how to reach people. Because in the end, we're different countries, but the needs are the same.
Yep,
They
absolutely.
really are. Yes, we have different resources. We're different financially, but humans are all the same, all cultures. We all want to be loved. We all want to have purpose. We want to have meaning. All those, they're all the same.
We're all people.
And so we've been able to learn a lot from you guys. If people want to learn more about you guys, where do they go? How do they get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, we have a webpage. It is BelizeCampingExperience.com. But if you really want to keep updated on what's happening, Facebook, Belize Camping Experience, then we have daily updates of the different activities that are happening and often different ways you can get involved from there. And there on the Facebook page, there's a button to learn more, and you can sign up for newsletters to get a little more in-depth stories. And so that's a great entryway into what BCE is about, or Belize Camping Experience.
Okay. And one of the needs you guys have right now that you guys are trying to develop, because I you know what, I think it's important. I think this is super cool. So you guys have used media over the last year to reach a bunch of people that you would never be able to.
Yeah.
You guys are on public TV stations. They're pulling your stuff because they see that you actually love the country.
Yeah. So we write our own curriculum for the kids. And then because of COVID, now we've started to make videos to go along. So we use that at camp, or we just make them standalone episodes to put on television. But we don't have any space to kind of expand it. And yet there's such a huge demand for it. And so that is a project, is we're trying to build a studio where we can have our 2 editors and our own green screen space, or voice recording. And right now we've had to use just a tiny spare room, which isn't really working out very well. Or the media in Belize City, there is no children's television that's produced in our country directed at our kids. And so the other media stations are open to helping us. So they've, at certain times lent us their green screen room and whatnot, which has been great. But it's not long term.
That's hard.
Yeah. So.
All right. So if people are interested, that's something that for us as a church, we definitely want to get behind and want to see that done, because it's awesome. It's super cool. I love what you guys are doing. Okay. So that's it. We are completely out of time. Unless you guys, gallery, you guys are good?
I think we're good. Elliot, do you have any questions?
Elliot, this is your one shot. Nothing. You get nothing. Okay, fine.
That's okay.
All right. Hey, awesome. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you guys check them out. Belize Camping Experience. Thanks for doing what you're doing. We will see you on the next one.
My name's Beckett. My name's Jasper. If you like this video, hit like, comment, subscribe. Join the Peanut Gallery.